Hi everyone, Ashlyn here from Minister for Happiness and welcome to this week's story time. Each Sunday I share an inspiring story, one for you to reflect upon and hopefully take the lessons into your life. And this week's story is about a man called Ignaz Semmelweis. And he was a young Hungarian doctor who started working in a hospital in Vienna in 1846. His first day on the job, he was placed in the maternity clinic of the hospital. At the time, there were countless numbers of young women and newborns dying of what was known as peripheral fever or childbed fever. And Ignaz became quite obsessed with figuring out what was causing these unnecessary deaths. This young hero started to become hyper observant of everything going on in the maternity clinic. He noticed there were two parts to the clinic. In one part, it was female staff, midwives, who were delivering babies. And in the other part of the clinic, it was young male doctors, student doctors, working on the other side of the clinic delivering babies. At the time, the percentage of death Ignaz observed in the female part was 1%. In the male part of the hospital where there were student doctors, it was 18% death rate. There were women at the time who said they would prefer to give birth on the street than go into the part with the doctors. And they sometimes begged, could they be transferred to the part with the midwives? So Ignaz looked at everything. He looked to see, was it possible that it had something to do with religion? Because in the maternity part where the females were, priests often came by to the women. In the male part, they didn't. But with much research and a few changes, nothing happened, nothing changed. It was still a higher death rate in the doctor's part of the hospital. He started looking at the way the doctors were delivering the babies. They had the women on their backs, whereas in the section where the midwives were, they had the women on their sides. So they made some changes, again to no avail, nothing changed. He rattled his brain, he did so much research, he looked at every detail. Until one day, he noticed that the doctors were practicing their procedures on cadavers of the young women who had died from the childbed fever. And one of the student doctors nicked his finger with a blade when he was doing a procedure on one of the cadavers, and he developed sepsis and died. Ignaz wondered, was it something to do with the cadavers? And he also noticed that the doctors who were doing these procedures on the cadavers in the morning were the same doctors who were then delivering babies in the clinic in the evening. He wondered, was it something being transferred from the cadaver to the healthy woman coming in to give birth? And he was right, because the midwives were not working on cadavers, only the doctors were. It was the only common thread he could find. And he came to a solid conclusion that obviously the doctors were transferring something from the cadavers to these women in the maternity hospital who were having their babies. And the only reason that he said it was being transferred is because they weren't washing their hands or changing their gloves. So he proposed this to all the doctors, that they needed to wash their hands between procedures and especially after working on the cadavers. But his ideas were dismissed. They thought it was ridiculous, too simple, couldn't be down to the doctors. These doctors were gentlemen, they were professionals. There was no way they were the reason that these women were dying and these newborns were dying unnecessarily. Ignaz became absolutely crazed with this. He went working in different hospitals and he moved through his career and still changing in many hospitals the procedures and getting people to wash their hands in different solutions. He became obsessed. And anywhere he went that he applied this, the death rate decreased, proving even more so that his theory was right. But still people didn't believe him. He was discredited. His peers and those who were higher up than him or writing papers or, at the time people who had, people would have looked up to, didn't take him seriously. He ended up in a mental institute and ironically was beaten by guards after a confrontation, and his wounds got infected and he developed sepsis and died an agonizing death, one that he had spent his whole career trying to prevent people dying of. And obviously nowadays we all know that if a doctor is going to do a procedure of any kind, washing their hands is essential. Washing hands is essential for all of us right now. We all know the importance of it because it's how things are transferred. But in 1846 no one believed him, and he went his whole life trying to prove his theory, and nobody believed him because it was too simple. I believe the lesson in this is that sometimes the simple things are the right things. There is a theory, I think it's Occam's razor, says that the quickest, simplest solution to a problem is usually the right one. Sometimes the solution is right in front of us, in our lives, in our work, in our relationships, in anything that we do. And just because other people don't believe us doesn't mean it's not right for us. Ignace was right. And it took a long time, not even in his lifetime, for his theory to be proved correct. Sometimes in our lives, the solutions are in front of us. So, I hope you take what you need from this lesson this week and it speaks to you in whatever way is needed. And obviously, the simple lesson as well of washing our hands, because right now is the safe thing to do. It's probably the one thing we can control to protect ourselves and each other. So I hope you like this week's story and take the lesson into your life. And please like and share, as always. And until next Sunday, stay healthy, stay happy, stay safe, and have the most wonderful weekend.